So let's go over here to the deep plot synopsis of Sion Sono's film from the year 2001 that we're going to be discussing. The Suicide Club. Yes, Suicide Club from 2001. 54 high school girls throw themselves in front of a subway train. This appears to be only the beginning of a string of suicides around the country. Does the new all-girl group Desert have anything to do with it? Detective Kuroda tries to find the answer, which isn't as simple as one could hope. Yes, the Suicide Club. So this, I guess before I get into this, I guess you have to give a trigger warning, I guess, or any kind of warning that you can warn somebody, because this is subject matter that some could find a little too real, a little too close to home, a little too much when it comes to the genre. I know that I always say that there's a line that you can cross, and there's a line that you go too far past, and this is one of those movies that it may just be the line for some people. And if that's the case, I totally understand. I warn you, and I actually recommend you stay away. If you feel like this is a line or could be a line for you, I recommend you stay away. Now, if you're a fan of physical media, this is an awesome little special edition here. We got the nice slipcover here of Suicide Club and this awesome little Blu-ray slip. Now, if you're a features person like me, you're going to be sorely disappointed because there's really no special features on this son of a gun, which is a damn shame because I actually would have loved to have seen that. But instead, I did more research on my own, did a lot more reading this week as opposed to watching special features, because also the Tokyo Gore Police Blu-ray, this has no features either. So the only feature on either one of these Blu-rays is a trailer for this movie. So that's absolutely wild that there's, just bare bones editions of really otherwise great horror movies. And I'm excited to discuss a little bit of my background of what I read on this movie. Your knowledge even on not fully prepared movies. What do you mean? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what you mean. Curly's here. Hey, Grande. I say J-Horror. Curly comes to run it because I did my last J-Horror show was Ringu series ranked with her, and we had a bunch of fun talking all things Sadako Yamamura. So hope all is well with you, Curly. For me, it all began with Evil Dead Trap giving me my old buddy Chasbro. Gene Sanford's in the house. Gene, welcome, my friend. Hope all is well with you. Then I saw House, the Japanese one. Well, you gotta love House, the Japanese one. I've done solo review on that. I actually have discussed that movie before on the channel, and I absolutely love that movie. I'm waiting for the 4K. That's got to be dropping on 4K at some point. Of course, I had to stop by for that. Hell yeah, Curly. I don't know what you're doing tomorrow. I'm off tomorrow. I got the day off work tomorrow, so maybe I'll get some pizza and I'll send you a picture of it because I know you're a fellow New York pizza lover like me. Aiden Vaver's in the house. Hello, everyone. Is that Donnie Darko? It's a mad world. I'm saying you're smart, even if not fully prepared. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. House was so wild, of course, and all the colors and techniques and stuff like that. Absolutely wild. I agree with you guys. So let me get a little bit into this movie and the background in this movie. Of course, it's directed by Sion Sono. And again, if I butcher any Japanese names, I truly do apologize. Sion Sono, I don't know. I suck at pronouncing Japanese names, so I do apologize for that. But of course, Sion Sono was a real guerrilla underground filmmaker in the late 80s and moving on to the 90s. And he was really experimental, very under the radar type of filmmaker. And then he flew to the United States in California and he attended school in Berkeley. And in Berkeley, he said he didn't learn anything. He didn't learn any English. What he did was he studied B movies and porn films in order to get a sense of taste and a sense of style for sleazy American cinema. And then, of course, he goes back to his native land of Japan, and it's all of a sudden it's the J-horror boom, which it really kicked off with, depending on who you ask, it's either, of course, Ringu or Ju-on the Curse. It depends. I mean, to me, it's Ringu. That's really the movie that spawned the J-horror movement, whether it be, Ju-on after, whether it be a One Missed Call, whether it be some of the films that Takashi Miike was directing around that time, or a Battle Royale. I mean, so many J-horror movies, Shudder, that just Dark Water, so many J-horror movies that just started booming. The J-horror movement was an absolute phenomenon around the late 90s, moving into the new millennium. And this is one of those movies to me that fits right in with it. And Sion Sono said, I have to make this movie that follows in trend of this and follows in the wave of this new J-horror movement. And what happened was right before he, had sat down and tried to think of an idea for an upcoming J-horror movie to go along with the movement, his best friend committed suicide. His best friend of many, many years committed suicide out of nowhere. And Sion said he was just thrown off by this, taken back by this. And he figured that the horror of his own real life and the horror of what his friend had done to himself could make for an interesting story if adapted in the right way in a J-horror movie. And then, of course, he comes across Yoshihiro Nishimura, who, of course, is a big special makeup effects artist and would go on to direct, funny enough, this movie, the Tokyo Gore Police, which we're going to be discussing here tonight. He goes on to him and he says, hey, man, I've been trying to get this idea off the ground. I really want to make this movie. And Yoshihiro, so he comes to him, he goes, listen, man, if you have an idea, you got to go for it. Like, just absolutely go for it. Take the gloves off and go for this thing. Like, don't hold back. And I'm here with you every step of the way. I'll do the special makeup effects. Let's do this thing. Let's make an impact. Let's strike a nerve in the horror society. And I don't think either one of them could have been prepared for the nerve that they were about to strike with this movie here, The Suicide Club from 2001. And like I said, I do have this really nice special edition Blu-ray. If you call it special, and again, special edition with no features. But I do like the slip cover. I like the reverse cover art. I like this. And if you would prefer this, it does flip over. It's reversible. So, I mean, it's pretty cool. But of course, this is one of those horror movies that to me starts off with such a bang. I mean, the movie opens where all of these girls are getting on a subway and they're all schoolgirls. They're laughing. They're talking about boys and grades and schoolwork and all these things. And of course, they all walk up to the train platform, grab each other hand in hand, count a 1, a 2, a 3, and jump in front of the fucking subway. And it causes this insane mass suicide with all of this gore that you could practically taste coming off the screen. I mean, it's just absolutely splat-tastic in its opening scene, and how holy shit, like, it's just a jaw-dropping moment. And it's like, that's how you start your film. And it also is a very big kind of notification and flag for the viewer, for them to say, I don't know what's going to come next, but anything can happen next. And I'm excited and I'm glued and I'm interested. Why did this just happen? What the fuck is going on? Holy shit. And to me, that's how you open a horror film. Like, that's exactly when I think of great horror openings. This is a movie that immediately comes to mind, is Sion Sono's film, The Suicide Club. I love the opening. You're just like, holy shit, taken back by it. We're then introduced to all of these kind of bland, detectives that, we have to try to get to the bottom of this, blah, blah, blah. That whole subplot is here nor there. I've never been a big fan of that subplot because it really leads to nothing. But of course, the next thing you see, you have this wild, scene in a school where all these kids are playing recess or talking about whatever on the roof of the school. And they're all talking back and forth. And the dark humor in this movie is actually fantastic. Now, if you don't have a dark sense of humor, you might find the humor in this movie not funny at all and actually in bad taste. And I understand if you do. But some of the humor in this movie is actually quite hysterical to me, where you'll have these kids going back and forth like, I'll kill myself. No, you stink. I'll kill myself better than that. And they're going back and forth and like, before we kill ourselves, we should all have an orgy, a fornication orgy. And, you're just trying to get in our pants. True. Like, this is absolutely insane with its dark humor. I have a really good time with the dark humor as all of these kids kind of stand on the ledge of the school and once again grab hands and decide to jump. And you have this insane fucking scene where these kids, they hit the ground and just splat. And you can actually clearly see there's extras just throwing buckets of blood on the windows of the school, like, holy shit type of deal. And like, to me, man, like, if you want to start a horror movie off where first 20 minutes, you're like, holy moly, it's this movie. I mean, it's just absolutely wild, the lengths that this movie goes in the beginning. It's really quite something. I mean, I just absolutely am floored by the lengths that he was able to go here. And this is not like this was a big budget movie, like I was saying before. Neither one of these movies we're going to talk about tonight had big budgets. But I think both of them, especially this movie, have imagination and have creativity and have something to say. I think this one really has more of something to say about society and about suicide and about the horrors really of fitting in. And of course, like I said, the investigation doesn't really go very far. And I always found it to be sort of a mass subplot in this movie because that whole thing leads to not much. Of course, you think, there's got to be a reason. There's got to be a Jim Jones. There's got to be something like that, like a cult leader. And they even do. They bring in a guy named Genesis, who's strict like a Japanese ripoff of Alex DeLarge, who from A Clockwork Orange, is a very similar character, where he has the glitter eyes and the hat and the whole fucking suit and all that shit. Very similar to that character. They think somebody like that has to be behind it, and in turn, it's only a scapegoat. This movie is really more about the horrors of fitting in and the horrors of peer pressure and the horrors that are brought onto us by society, whether it be a certain look, whether it be a certain fad, whether it be a certain thing on the internet that you might see. And you might say, oh, that's blasphemy that people would start killing themselves in order to fit in. You say blasphemy, I say absolutely. Because you think about even in our country, right? I mean, I'm not in Japan. I don't know any of the, politics there or stuff that has happened suicide rate wise. But I can tell you in this country, I can name a ton of shit that's happened even in my own lifetime where I'm like, holy shit, like, do people remember the Tide Pod incidents where people would actually take Tide Pods and eat them as internet dare challenges and die? Like, do people remember that? Do people remember the Cut for Bieber scenario when Justin Bieber got caught at whatever age smoking pot, and all of his female fans that loved and adored him and bought standees of him and bled Justin Bieber literally started to bleed and cut themselves for Justin Bieber to have him stop smoking marijuana? Do people remember that? That was a real thing. People actually fucking cut themselves in order for that motherfucker to stop smoking weed. Like, that is crazy stuff there. Absolutely crazy how these fads take over. And they don't have to just be grand fads like that. They could be smaller ones. Look at all the TikTok fads. Look at all the people with the dancing fads and all that stuff where the internet really weighs large on people trying to prove themselves to a community and trying to fit in and be a part of something and get noticed and get recognition. That's really what the horrors of this movie is about. And each suicide feels like each one of these people are trying to fit in or trying to prove something. It's not like they're under a trance. It's not like they're under a spell, like in a Smile, if you will, or The Happening, where people are literally just purposely dropping dead. This is a movie where what I think is so scary about it is the people are choosing to off themselves. It's not like they're under a spell or they believe in a higher power or this, that, or the other. They're just trying to fit in. And I find that so damn effective and horrific. To me, that's horror done right, in my humble opinion. I love the horror in this movie. And of course, we have some very interesting visuals where the cops on the scene, they find all of this skin sort of molded and stitched and stapled together of all of these people that join hands in the suicide. They cut off portions of their bodies to make this giant fucking, almost like a Hubble Bubble, like a Laffy Tape thing of fucking bubble gum, but with human skin on it. And it's all gooey and gory and disgusting. And a lot of the skin tags you can see have tattoos, and they think, oh, tattoos, maybe, just maybe, the cult has something to do with tattoos. They keep saying all of these things, that end up really having not much to do with anything, which I thought was kind of funny, but an insane visual there. We get some very interesting atmospheric shots in a hospital in this movie where I thought Sion Sono, it almost felt like he was directing a different movie when we got to the hospital portion, which is very small, but I know they cut a lot out of it. I know they were trying to make a scare sequence with a fax machine, which, granted, 2001 fax machines were used. 2023, I mean, does anybody use a fax machine anymore? So that may not have aged well. Even though I know fax machines are still around, I'm sure somebody still fucking uses them. I don't know how well that would have aged here. Just me, though. You have some really disturbing sequences where people are offing themselves, whether it be a woman that's cutting bread for the family. She's cutting bread for the family. Her hand is on the bread, and she just starts cutting her own fingers off and doesn't sell it. And her little daughter watches her doing it, and she's like, Mom, what are you doing? And the mother's just cutting her fingers off like there's nothing going on, and all the gore where you're like, oh my God, stop cutting your fingers off, you crazy bitch. The kid runs to her, oh my God, Dad, Mom's going crazy. She's already fucking crazy. And people sticking their heads into ovens, and people fucking taking pills so they'll overdose. Absolutely insanity goes on in this movie of all the ways people try to off themselves in order to truly fit in. And throughout the movie, our lead detective, who actually, funny enough, which is the cool kind of, tie to these two movies here, and another Japanese horror movie that Miss C has already mentioned, Ryo Ishibashi plays the lead detective Kuroda in this movie. You may remember him from a little movie called Audition, which also stars this woman from Audition. Of course, you have the two leads in both movies are also, they were the co-stars of Audition as the two leads in that. So crazy that they kind of both have ties to other really good J-horror movies. He keeps getting calls from this little boy who slowly but surely asks him, hey, do you feel connected to yourself? And he's like, what do you mean? Do I feel connected to myself? What are you talking about? Of course I am. Like, tell me what's going on. He's trying to figure out what's going on. And the little boy says, you're connected to your wife. If you left today, she'd miss you forever. Your kids, same thing. You left today, they'd miss you forever. But are you connected to yourself? And he keeps asking that pivotal question that the lead detective doesn't quite know how to answer. He can lie, but he doesn't know the truth in that answer. And there's a heartbreaking scene where the detective comes home and finds that his entire family has committed suicide. And it's just this heartbreaking moment for the lead detective where he feels that he's maybe so caught up in his own job and the well-being of others that he wasn't paying enough attention to his own family. And it's this moment of heartbreak for our lead detective character where he walks in and his entire family has now committed suicide and he blames himself for it. And thus offing himself. And this movie is just absolutely wild with some of the conspiracies within it too, because of course we do follow this one girl, and I want to get the actress name right here. I thought she did a wonderful job. Oh gosh, what's her damn name? I got to get this woman's name because I think she's great. She's the one on the cover of this. She's just a wonderful actress in this movie. I can't fucking find her name. I apologize. I can't find her name here, but she does a great job. There's a point where she's walking home from school, minding her own damn business, and all of a sudden somebody jumps off a roof and hits her on the way down, and it's her own boyfriend, and hits her in the ears. She's bleeding, and he's, reaching up, and she's like, God damn it, you killed yourself. I got to live and go on with this shit. I thought that was, again, dark humor done right. She kind of walks off, whatever. She notices that there's this little band called Dessert, and it's spelled Desart. And she goes to her boyfriend's apartment, who's since passed away, and she finds that on the poster, there's all these sorts of subliminal messages, and the subliminal message spells the word suicide. And she thinks maybe this pop girl band might be involved, and it might be a message for people to go off and off themselves. Just absolutely crazy the length this movie goes to, where you're like, holy shit, she's seeing messages on a girl band poster and making some sort of sense out of it. I thought that was wonderful. I really did. I thought that was absolutely horrifying stuff. I was like, damn, like, this is crazy. And it made me think about it too. You think of the word dessert, right? Okay, we think of dessert. It's something that's enjoyable. It's good. And everybody kind of likes it, but too much of it can be bad for you. And then here in this movie, that pop band, it's good. People like it, but it seems like they're getting a little too much of it. Thus, all these people are starting to kill themselves off one by one. Kind of crazy, which it feels like that they might be tied into it. And what I like is we really don't get that definitive of an answer. They could have been involved. It could have entirely been a coincidence. It could have been a deal where you want to put the blood on their hands. You want to blame somebody, but maybe there's just nobody to blame at the same time. And I always thought the finale of this movie, the very closing shot, painted such a beautiful picture. And if a picture's worth 1,000 words, the ending of this movie says about 1,000,000. And what do I mean by that? The very ending is actually, you get this shot here of our lead girl, and she's getting ready to go on the subway. And there's another detective that believes that in another, flesh tape thing, that he sees a tattoo that she had shown him earlier in the film. He runs to the subway. He sees her. The train's coming up, and your heart's pounding. You're thinking, oh my God, she's going to jump in front of the train, kill herself. He grabs her hand, and she kind of pulls away. And just death stares him, just looks him straight in the eye as seriously as she can. And he looks all defeated and like, oh, like, don't do it. And the train comes by, and she doesn't blink. She doesn't flinch. She doesn't miss a beat. The train comes by, and she hops on the train. She kind of looks at him as the train goes away. And I always felt, to me, the beauty and the brilliance of this movie and why its horror works for me is that ending, because it's almost in a way saying, yeah, you may be here right now to try to save me, and you may have thought that I had some, you know, preconceived notions of jumping in front of this subway. Um, but you're not always going to be there, and it's not in your control. And I think that's what's so scary about this movie is that there's nothing he could do to stop her. She really wants to end her life. She could do it at any time. And that's truly horrifying. It's out of our control. And I think in a lot of ways, and not to get too meta here, but like I was saying before, Cian Sono's best friend had committed suicide. I think in a lot of ways that was his helplessness. I think he felt that I was a good friend to him. I was there for him. There was nothing I could have done. And I think that's really well portrayed and painted in this particular picture. And it's sad, it's morbid, it's deep, it's dare I say, very graphic and gruesome for people to think about those type of themes in horror, but they do exist. And honestly, I think this is a really well done horror film from top to bottom. I mean, Cian Sono just does a wonderful job in the director's chair of tackling all these different sorts of themes while still being over the top, entertaining, gory, all of the things that the J horror movies were kind of known for being at that point, and scary and atmospherically. He has a little bit of everything. It's a very grand film, is The Suicide Club. I highly recommend this movie.